This is section 8.5, proportions in triangles. The first theorem we're going to talk about is the side splitter theorem. And it says, if a line is parallel to one side of a triangle and intersects the other two sides, then it divides those sides proportionally. For example, if I'm looking at this triangle, this line here is parallel to this line of my triangle. What this means is now I have AD over DB is equal to AE over EC. So I have, in this case, I have top over bottom and top over bottom. Now, again, in order for this to work, in order for me to say that this side and this side is proportional to this side and this side, I have to have this line parallel to this line. Alright, so let's practice. Here's our first example. We have a triangle, and I know that this line here is parallel to this line here. So that means I know that these are going to be proportional. Now remember on the last slide we did top over bottom. So we're going to stick with that little trend. So I have top, which is x, over the bottom piece, which is 16. So x over 16 is equal to 5 over 10, because remember I have to do top over bottom. So now I'm just going to cross multiply like I normally do. And I have x times 10, which is 10x, 16 times 5, which is equal to 80. And if I divide both sides by 10, then I get x is equal to 8. Alright, let's do example number 2. So example number 2, we have the same thing. We have x plus 1.5 is this piece, x is this piece, 5 is here, and 2.5 is here. So I'm going to set up a proportion, and I have x plus 1, 5. So I have top over the bottom on the same side is equal to 5 over 2.5. Now I can cross multiply. So I have 5x is equal to 2.5 times x plus 1.5. Now don't forget to put this in parentheses because we need to be able to distribute this. So I have 5x is equal to 2.5x plus 3.75. Now I subtract 2.5 from both sides. 2.5x. So I am left with 2.5x is equal to 3.75. 2.5x is equal to 3.75. I just copied this over to here. So I divide by 2.5 on both sides. So I get x is equal to 1.5. Alright, now your next example I want you to do and then bring it to class so I can check it to make sure that you are on the right track. Alright, this works with parallel lines as well. So, the corollary to the side splitter theorem says if 3 parallel lines intersect 2 transversals, then the segments made are proportional. For example, here's my 3 parallel lines, and I have them cut by a transversal. So my sides are proportional. So I have A over B is equal to C over D. So this side over this side is equal to here over here. Now, we're going to find the value of x and y using that concept. So, since I know that these lines are all parallel, I'm going to make parallel, 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 parallel. So I have more than 3 lines cut by 2 transversals, being my 2 outside pieces, and now I can solve for x and then I can solve for y. So the first thing I'm going to do is have this piece here. So I'm going to have 2 feet over x is equal to 1.7 over 1.7. So I have 2 over x is equal to 1.7 over 1.7. Now I can do two things. I can either cross multiply, or I can realize that this ratio is equal to 1, because 1.7 divided by 1.7 is 1. So then x has to equal 2. So that 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1 as well. Now the other thing I need to do is now solve for y. And I know that this piece here is 2. So that will make my life a whole bunch easier. So now I have 2 over 3 is equal to 1.7 over y. So now I can cross multiply. So I get 2y is equal to 5.1. And then I'm going to divide these both by 2. So I get y is equal to 2.55. Okay. Now next problem. We're going to solve for both x and y. Now these three lines here are going to be my parallel lines. So I know that these sides are cut proportionally. So I'm going to solve for x first. And we're going to do left over right. So I have my left side, which is x, over my right side, which is 30. So I have x over 30 is equal to left side, 15, over 26. Now, the problem with choosing 16 over y for my second piece is that then I have an x and a y in my same equation, and I have no way of solving for one of them. So I had to pick the line that gave me both of my values. So now I can cross multiply. So I get 26x is equal to 450. Then I can divide both sides by 26. So I get x is equal to 450 over 26, which reduces to 225 over 13. So my value for x is 225 over 13. Now, I also need to solve for y, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do left, right, left, right. So I have 15 over 26 is equal to 16.5 over y. So I have 15y is equal to 429. So I have 15y equals 429, and I divide by 15 on both sides. So I get y is equal to, if I type this into my calculator instead of reducing it, I get 28.6. So the value here is 28.6, and the value here is 225 over 13. Okay, now for our last theorem. We have the triangle angle bisector theorem. So it says if a ray bisects an angle of a triangle, then it divides the opposite side into two segments that are proportional to the other two sides of the triangle. Meaning that if I cut this angle in half, then I know that CD over BD is equal to AC over AB. So that means CD over BD is equal to AC over AB. Now, that's a little bit harder to remember, but it does make sense once you look at it for a little bit. Now, don't forget, bisects means to split in half or two congruent parts. Now for our last example. So this example, I know that these pieces are proportional with these two pieces. So I can write a proportion that says 6 over x. So I have my 6 over x is equal to 5 over 8. Now notice that I'm using the right-hand side and then the left-hand side. So 5 over 8. Now I can cross multiply. So I have 6 times 8, which is 48, equals 5x. Divide by 5 on both sides. So I get x is equal to 48 divided by 5. Now my next example is right here, and we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to use, except this time we're going to go left side, then right side, then left side, then right side. So I have 5 over 8 is equal to 3.6 over y. And I'm going to cross multiply, so I get 5y is equal to 28.8. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So I'm left with y is equal to 5.76. Now the last one I want you to do, I want you to solve for x, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you that x is equal to 18 and see if you can get the correct answer. Have a good night.